Hey guys, quick editor note before the video starts. Space Marine 2 actually released a hotfix today that already lowered some of the challenge requirements before the video went live. But honestly, I already wrote the script, and I think the overall discussion around long-term progression, the endgame rewards, and the community reaction is actually quite interesting. So I still wanted to upload the video and talk about it. So have fun. So after playing the new patch 13 update for a while now, and after reading lots of community feedback, Reddit posts, YouTube comments, Discord discussions, I kinda wanted to sit down and talk about it. Because I think there's a really interesting conversation happening right now around the whole Cape grind, the new progression system, and honestly just the overall reaction to the update. And before I even start, I completely understand why some players are frustrated. Like I really do. Some of the requirements look intimidating at first, and if you're someone who doesn't play absolute difficulty regularly, I can absolutely see why this update feels overwhelming. But at the same time, I also think there's another perspective here that maybe isn't getting talked about enough. One thing I've noticed in the Space Marine 2 community recently is that negative opinions spread really fast, especially once larger creators, Reddit threads, community discussions start leaning in one direction. And I'm not even saying people are intentionally being negative or misleading. I don't think that one at all. A lot of creators are just reflecting what they see from the community. But sometimes it creates this feedback loop where people mostly hear, oh, this is terrible, this is too much, nobody wants this, and the devs are out of touch. And after hearing that over and over again, that kind of becomes the accepted community's opinion before people even experience the content for themselves. And that's honestly part of the reason I wanted to make this video in the first place. Not to say people are wrong for disliking aspects of the update, but just to offer another point of view from someone who actually played this game a lot. I've got over 800 hours in Space Marine 2 at this point, and I've been playing this game pretty consistently since its launch, through basically every major phase the game has gone through so far. I've played when Ruthless was introduced, when Absolute first got introduced, and through all the changes and balancing that happened afterwards. I've played through balance changes, class reworks, weapon changes, heroic gear introduction, all of it basically. And because of that, I think my perspective on this update is a little different from some of the reactions I've been seeing online. I think the biggest thing people disagree on right now is what are these cape rewards actually supposed to represent? Because if you view them as normal cosmetics that everyone should unlock quick, then yeah, the grind probably feels excessive. But I generally don't think that that's what these rewards are meant to be. To me, these feel like long-term endgame progression cosmetics, something you slowly unlock over time while playing the game naturally. And honestly, I think Space Marine 2 needed more systems like that. And another thing people overlook here is that not every challenge in the system is designed to be some insane grind. A lot of them are things you complete naturally just by playing the game. Getting kills, playing certain classes, finishing operations, and stuff like that. And honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if future cosmetic updates work the same way, like the upcoming tabards and ropes coming in future patches. I could easily see those being tied to similar progression systems too. Maybe not as extreme as the capes, but definitely connected to long-term challenges in some way. Another factor is that I think gaming culture around progression has changed a lot over the years. Back in older multiplayer games, grind-based rewards were normal. Halo Reach armor, World of Warcraft mounts, MMO gear sets, prestige cosmetics. Some of the World of Warcraft mounts required you to clear difficult raids every single week, sometimes month, and then you still needed RNG drops on top of that. Those things took time, and the reason people cared about them was because they took time. If you saw someone wearing a difficult cosmetic, you immediately knew, okay, this player put in the time. That made rewards meaningful. Nowadays, I think players are way more used to instant access systems. A new content update comes out, and people expect to either unlock everything immediately, finish it by the weekend, or bypass the grind entirely by a paywall. And even in Space Marine 2 itself, most cosmetic systems are already instant access friendly. A new chapter pack drops, you buy the season pass or you purchase the pack individually, spend some in-game currency, which most of us players already are completely stacked on anyway, and you immediately unlock the cosmetics you want. So these cape challenges are honestly one of the first systems in a while that actually feel designed around long-term progression instead of an instant gratification. And I think the difference is important because without systems like this, there's really isn't much true endgame progression left outside of just leveling weapons, classes, or completing weekly stratagems for acolytes. And honestly, Space Marine 2 already had this exact type of progression before. Think about rewards like the Absolute Shoulder Plate, which got reworked during patch 13 now, the Survivor Helmet back then, or some of the Siege cosmetics and weapon skins. Those rewards already worked on the exact same principle. They represented time and experience. Back when those things came out, everybody wanted them. Those items became status symbols inside the game, not because they were paid cosmetics or they were limited time store items, but they represented achievement. And personally, I think that's healthy for a multiplayer game. Another thing I don't see people mentioning enough, absolute difficulty changed a lot over the years. Not because enemies got weaker or got buffed. We as the players today are also significantly stronger than we used to be. We had meaningful weapon buffs, stronger builds, better class identity, heroic gear, and honestly some setups nowadays just completely melt bosses compared to earlier patches. Even something like the patch 13 bolter buff now changed how certain classes perform dramatically. And I do think a lot of the player base identify as a more casual player, which is completely fair. A lot of people don't want every absolute run to feel super locked in and hyper competitive. Some players probably avoid absolute entirely just because they already view it as stressful or intimidating before even trying it. So when I look at these cape requirements, I don't really see them as impossible challenges designed for only hardcore players. I mostly see them as long-term progression goals tied to content many players are already engaging with anyway. And this is actually the biggest point for me personally. Most people are already progressing these cape unlocks naturally without even realizing it. If you're doing your weekly stratagems on hard mode, you're already making progress, especially since harder weekly stratagems already push players into absolute difficulty pretty regularly anyway. And another thing worth mentioning, this is still a co-op game built around 3-player teams. Nobody is realistic expecting every single player to solo carry these missions alone. You're playing with different classes, different skill levels, different builds, and ideally improving together over time. And honestly, part of me wonders if this is also the developers trying to slowly prepare the player base for future endgame content going into year 3. That's why I don't really view these cosmetics as, oh my god, I need to hard grind this immediately. I see them more as, cool, something long term to work towards while I keep playing. And I honestly think that mindset changes the entire conversation around the update. One thing multiplayer games struggle with constantly is player retention after content drops. People always ask, where's the end game? Why is there nothing to grind for? Why do cosmetics not feel rewarding? And when developers finally add something that actually takes commitment, the community sometimes pushes back against it immediately. That's a difficult balance for developers to manage, because if everything is unlocked instantly, people also complain there's no long-term progression. And let's be honest, Space Marine 2 already has a limited operation pool right now. After hundreds of hours, you are replaying the same maps over and over again. So the game kinda needs systems that give those repeated runs additional purpose. At least now you're killing the Hive Tyrant for the 500th time and also progressing towards something meaningful for your character. Now, with all that said, I do think there's room for adjustments. I think maybe the final cape tier could require fewer missions. Maybe 70 or 80 instead of 100. That would probably make the system feel less intimidating for average players while still keeping the prestige factor intact. And honestly, I think that's probably the best middle ground we can have. Keep the long term progression, keep the prestige, but smooth out the extreme end a little bit. But overall, I think this update is being viewed a little too negative right now. Not because criticism is bad, criticism is actually important, but because I think a lot of people are only hearing one side of the conversation. So I wanted to give another perspective from someone who generally enjoys having long-term progressive goals in games like these. I don't think every cosmetic should be instant. I don't think every reward should be easy, and I think multiplayer games are healthier when certain items actually mean something. But I'm curious what you guys think. Do you prefer long-term grind rewards, or do you think the requirements are still too much even for endgame content? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.